Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
So the other night, Kentucky beat Duke.
Mm-hmm. They did.
Terrific basketball game. The first game was just set the game back about 20 years. Michigan State and Kansas, it just was not a good game.
No.
But the second game advanced the sport.
Mm-hmm.
It was just terrific between those two teams. So Jerry Valeri comes in wearing a Kentucky pullover today.
He does.
And I'd like to point out that Penn State's only played one game at Rupp Arena. Penn State won. Okay, so let's move on. I was a witness.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, just
nicely
thought I'd
done.
mention that.
That wasn't the dig I thought you were going to make at him, but okay. That's a good one.
Well, I'm not going to get into, whether it was 3X, 2X, whatever. I'm not going to get into that part.
Jeez.
What?
Nothing.
I wasn't going to get into it. Then you brought it up. Why did you bring it up?
You want to know what's funny to me, Steve? Do you know what is an equivalent broadcast? Things that are on the same channel, one would think. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
Do you know, in the span of a week, Penn State will have played 2 games on Peacock? One basketball, one football.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's going to be 2 basketballs, 1 football.
Two basketball, one football.
They played on Peacock the other night with St. Francis.
Did not know that one.
Oh, God, do I have to sit here and do everything? It's just like working with Jason Lord. There's no difference.
What?
There's no difference.
All righty there. Okay.
All right, so let's start with Thursday Night Football for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
The schedule's been a little bit better the last couple of years. That changes tonight dramatically. This is a terrific game tonight. The unfortunate part, it's the short week each one has to deal with. The Eagles have been playing well, but to their credit, they have played well against a schedule that you just sit back and go, really? This is the National Freaking Football League? Their schedule's been lousy.
Yeah.
To this point. Now, it doesn't matter. In the NFL, wins are wins.
You got to beat who you're next to.
Right. And the last game, was against a divisional opponent. Okay.
And to quote The Weeknd, the Cowboys were blinded by the lights. Continue.
Right. The Cowboys just are not a good football team.
Nope.
But tonight they get Washington, and Washington is a good football team. Look, in the NFC, there's only one team I think at the moment might be better than Philadelphia. And I don't mean might. I think they are better than Philadelphia. That's Detroit.
Detroit, yeah.
Detroit is really good, outstanding in the trenches. Goff, I know Goff's coming off a 5-interception game. I got that. But they still won the game.
They won with him having a 5-interception game, which shows you something.
Right. And one of them was at the end of a half. I never feel like that's a pick. It's just like, okay.
It's an air quotes interception.
We're just throwing one downfield. They happen to catch it. The only time I think it counts is if you take it all the way back. Now it counts.
Yes.
But
Commanders are a good team.
But the Commanders are very good, and Daniels is really good. They get a lot of credit, Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the secondary for the Eagles. DeJean has now come in. He's playing the slot corner. I am not even remotely surprised that he's playing well, because I thought at Iowa he was terrific. Yeah. Mitchell, I didn't know anything about till the draft. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know about Toledo football. I mean, really, I've been by their stadium. That's about the extent of it. Plus, I did a basketball game there once. But he's come in and he has all the tools to be what you think can be a long-term lockdown corner in the NFL. And that's saying something. Their linebacking play is not great in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, Washington's defense has played well. The Steelers kind of got away with one on Sunday because, look, you get down to the 1-yard line and you fumble like that, which the Steel Warren did. You're like, wow, it's Washington's day when that happens. And that they still won on that touchdown pass from Wilson to Williams where he's falling back, and that's Russell Wilson's one of the few guys that can make that throw.
Yeah, and he's
in
cooking
the league. Now he's playing really, really well. They've got Baltimore this weekend. It's interesting because in my class, Eric DeCosta's the GM for the Ravens. His daughter's in my class. Right, so God, she hates Syracuse. No, just kidding. Oh, what? No.
Just had to throw that in there.
She does not.
Had to throw it in.
No, Jane does not have a mean bone in her body. Okay, she just doesn't. Okay, I've cornered the market on that. So, so she'll wear all of Ravens gear and the whole thing. All these people wearing Steelers gear. I don't think the people in the class know.
Yeah,
who her dad is.
They don't put two and two together.
But that's okay. And she's an excellent student, by the way. But the
Commanders Eagles game.
No, I want to go. I'm going over to Ravens and Steelers. Lamar Jackson says he can't explain why, for whatever reason, the Steelers are a team he just doesn't have success against. And I can completely understand that because he has success against everybody else. As I have explained, and I even talked about this in my class yesterday, I said they've only lost one game ever with him as a starter to an NFC team. They never see him. They see him, once every 4 years, right? And the Giants were the only ones that beat him. When the Giants went to the playoffs that year, and they beat the Vikings and actually advanced.
Yeah.
Barkley made a great play at the end of that game where he got to the 5 and then he did a hook slide to run the clock out. And the Steelers, I think they understand, for the most part, what angles to take on him. I think for the most part, they've done a good job of taking certain guys away. Now, I think Bateman's a good receiver. I think Flowers is dynamic. He's dynamic. And I give him a lot of credit because in the AFC Championship game last year, he made a couple of big mistakes.
Yeah.
As a rookie, he made a couple of big mistakes. Things happen. Well, sometimes that can scar somebody. He's playing like, he's fine. And he's doing, and getting Mark Andrews back has really helped.
He's played well.
Henry is a terrific addition to that running back.
He is. There's a reason he's one of the best running backs in the NFL.
Now, the key is going to be whether Kyle Hamilton plays. Hamilton is just one of the truly special defensive backs in the NFL. He's that hybrid. We talk about Jalen Reed on the collegiate level as that hybrid safety. You can move him into the box. I'm not going to call him a linebacker, but a safety you can move into the box. Kyle Hamilton, you can move into the box. The Steeler defense, Watts played great. Hargraves played great. Okay? Hayward's playing really well. Queen is now really starting to kick it into another gear. For the most part, the secondary has played well. Joey Porter Jr.'s had a good year. All right? You got Andrews and Freiermuth, two good tight ends. There's no question Russell Wilson has changed the dynamic of what had been a field goal-oriented offense before into now a touchdown-oriented offense. So that makes a big difference. Is that game at 1 o'clock?
It is a 1 o'clock game.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
By the way, like you mentioned, Kyle Hamilton.
What's the Sunday night game?
The Sunday night game, if I can quickly pull these all up, the Sunday night game is going to be Bengals-Chargers on Peacock and NBC. And then Monday night is the Battle of Texas.
This game
Cowboys.
Should have been.
Yeah.
This game should have been a primetime game.
Well, the 3-4 o'clock games are all interesting for a lot of reasons.
But this should have been the primetime. This should have been,
it should have been flexed and flipped out.
Right.
But
then remember, they are playing the 4:30 game on December 21st, which is the first day of the college football playoff.
And there's a chance that Penn State plays at 4 o'clock.
That game is in Baltimore. Then, of course, the Steelers have the game with Kansas City on Netflix, and Baltimore will get Houston.
And by the way, I want to just Kyle Hamilton. Like you mentioned Jalen Reed, and Kyle Hamilton coming out of the draft when he was taken, 14th or 13th in the draft? It was when he got drafted to that Ravens team, everyone kind of raised their eyebrows as to like, this feels like a really good fit for him because he can do what he wants to. I don't think people quite get how talented he is because
he knows how to play.
He knows how to play. And also, the reason people like Rob Gronkowski and other big tight ends have so much success is because they are a matchup nightmare.
Sure.
Kyle Hamilton is 6'4" and built pretty big.
Takes it away.
He can take that guy away, and he could take away a receiver,
but he might,
and he can do everything.
But he might not play.
Which is big.
In this game, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then as for tonight, now it's a different coaching staff at Washington. But even when Washington was hanging in there in the last couple of years, 2-3 years, for whatever reason, they matched up well with Philadelphia. Right? And you know how I feel about matchups. All this blah, blah, blah. I'm not into that. I'm not into the glitter and the bluster. It's about matchups.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, why could A beat B, B can beat C, and you assume A will beat C. No, and C beats A. Why? Because for whatever reason, they got a couple matchups that work. That's why that to me is important. And I look at for whatever reason, they match up well. They're going to have to do the Eagles a good job in McLaurin. McLaurin is, to his credit, a terrific wide receiver.
He's a stud.
And I think their running game is really good. The ability of Daniels to buy time and selectively run is not something the Eagles are used to seeing because very few people in the NFL have that.
He has a threat of his legs at all times, and that is something you have to be aware of as a linebacker or as someone else. Like we've seen it in recent games with Penn State where they're facing someone who has to run, and you just at all times have to have an eye on him and make sure he doesn't have space to break out for 20, 30 yards.
If I'm a Chicago Bears fan, do I have questions about how the draft turned out?
I don't think you're there yet for the Bears. I think the Bears are a year away from that question. I think you give it a year. Give it a year. It helps. He's got a good offensive coordinator with Daniels. He's got a good one with him. Like, give it time. I also want to bring up for the Commanders, I haven't talked since the trade happened. Marshawn Lattimore is a Commander. He's out for this week. He's probably out until next week's game. He is one of my favorite players to watch. That Saints 2017 draft class, I know we've talked about it a little bit here because it's, I think, the best draft class one team has ever had in terms of just the talent in it. What? Would you not say every single pick they had hit?
No. Somebody sent me a post about it snowing later today. That's the only reason I made the face.
Well,
sorry about that.
The Saints draft class 2017, you had Alvin Kamara, pretty good at football. Marshawn Lattimore, would you say very good?
Yeah, no longer there.
No longer there. Ryan Ramczyk is out for the year. He's probably gone. Marcus Williams, incredible. Trey Hendrickson, incredible. So that draft class was great. But Marshawn Lattimore goes into this team.
But he's not playing tonight.
He's not playing tonight. He's playing next week. But going forward, that is going to be a big positive for Washington because I believe he's there for at least the next year or two on his contract.
But this is what they did with the trade. They told their fans they're going for it.
Yeah.
Okay? It's always important to give your fans something where you sit back and go, we're having a really good year. Can we somehow keep it? Hey, you know what? They're trying. They're going to go for it.
Yeah. They're not only are they going for it, but they're going for it, and they're not just trading for guys who will need to hit this year. He's got a future still. He's 28, and he is still a lockdown cornerback. If they ever play the Buccaneers, it's an automatic win because Mike Evans can't do anything against Marshawn Lattimore. There's something to be said about having someone who is still going forward, is just hitting their prime, But again, a good player, and the key to me is that they told their fans, okay, we're going to do what we can to get better. Yeah.
And that's really important that they tell their fans that have been suffering for a while.
Yes.
You know, they have new ownership, new way of doing things, new money, everything that's in there that you're like, okay, great. And then you look around and say, hey, they're trying to get better here. That's what they're trying to do. And the Eagles have done that through the draft. Like I said, Mitchell, a great pick. DeGene, great pick. I mean, they've done a lot there. The key's going to be up front. Can the Commanders do a good job of neutralizing that front for Philadelphia, or does Barkley again become the X factor that people can't stop? And that in turn then makes Jalen Hurts more effective. Conversely, right, can the Philadelphia front make inroads? 'Cause I'm not big on the Philadelphia front, have not been. I'm not big on Jalen Carter. I'm not big on Davis. I never have been.
Yeah.
The only area where I'm big on Davis is that he's big. And I think he's too big. So I think that that's going to be, like, up front's going to be so important. And again, over the years, for whatever reason, Washington has matched up pretty well with Philadelphia. I know there have been some subtle changes, and obviously a big change as a coach, but they win some of those one-on-one matchups, and I think that's really important. And tonight on Prime Video, that is going to be the potential to be one of the better Prime Video games we've had.
Yeah. We have not been here since the college football playoff rankings were updated.
Yeah,
talked about.
It's a snapshot.
It's a snapshot.
All it is a snapshot. It's not. I have not in 1 second made a big deal out of this at all.
I know.
Along the way, because I know what it is. It's a snapshot. Okay, and you keep going snapshot to snapshot.
And I just want to bring up where we're at right now, which is Penn State currently sits 4th in the rankings. They would be the 6th seed in the bracket. They're currently matched up against Ole Miss, who is the 11, who they, of course, faced last season in the Peach Bowl. And I've seen a lot of people bringing this up and talking about it, and they're outraged over the rankings and how they're built. And they're like, oh, how dare they put Georgia down at 12 when you've got Penn State and Indiana and Texas at 3, 4, 5. My response to them is, what's Georgia's record? Like, yeah, okay. Georgia's played some incredibly tough teams. They lost to Alabama. They lost to, I believe, Ole Miss. They beat Texas. Whatever. Okay. But they have 2 losses. Penn State's got 1 loss. Their 1 loss is to Ohio State, the number 2 team in the nation. Ohio State's loss is to Oregon, the number 1 team in the nation. Boise State has 1 loss. They lost by a field goal to Oregon, and they're ranked below Georgia. Right. So, like, the whole, oh, how dare the committee put Georgia down this low? They've got 2 losses. What's your point?
Okay. So let's start with Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. Georgia is playing Tennessee this week.
It's a huge game.
Right? If Georgia loses, they have 3 losses. They're out of it.
Yeah.
Now, I know, Heather Dinich and I have known each other for, since she was at the CDT way back when, back in the early 2000s, right? And she thinks a 3-loss team might not be completely out of it. And I will disagree with her, saying there's too many teams in the 1-loss and 2-loss pool. It's the volume of teams.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're 3, you're out of it. And I know like the quality of loss at Alabama, okay, quality of loss. The loss at Ole Miss is a quote under the category of a quality loss, okay? Because you played a ranked team on the road in their stadium, the whole thing. I got it. But 3 losses put you out of it, in my opinion. Tennessee, say Georgia wins. Tennessee gets into the 2-loss pool. Okay. Well, because they played each other, I would be inclined to put Georgia ahead of them.
I agree.
Body of work in the end is going to mean everything as to, obviously with no losses, you are getting a bye. Yeah, and I'm talking about in the Power 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Talking about the Power 4. I'm not talking about others. If you have 1 loss, you're in. 2 losses is where you get into the opinion pool.
Yeah.
What about this? What about that? Where'd they play this game? Where'd they play that game? You know,
And
you start comparing games, and one of the things, for example, like, would be, well, what about LSU? LSU's got 3 losses. Okay, LSU has 3 losses. One of them's to USC. Interesting. Yeah. But that's where you are. When it comes to the Penn State part, I guess somebody told me Paul Feinbaum said something.
He went on. It was him and Heather who are the two that kind of talked about it. Paul's was the more fiery, impassioned rant of how dare they put Penn State at 4.
First of all,
whatever.
First of all, everybody's entitled to an opinion. I don't care.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, do they care about my opinion? No. Well, what a coincidence. I don't care about their opinion either. That's fine. It's just Penn State needs to keep winning. It doesn't matter about opinions.
Yeah.
Paul doesn't have a vote. Okay. Heather doesn't have a vote. I don't know how many people there are, 15 or whatever.
Some might have.
They have
a little
votes.
over a dozen now.
They have votes. They don't have votes. Why do you care what they think? I mean, I know you want to. Everybody wants to hear all roses and everything about their team, and I understand that. Okay, I understand that part because everybody wants to hear great things about their team. But everybody's entitled to an opinion. That's their opinion. That's fine. They're entitled to it, but their opinion doesn't matter. Why? They don't have a vote. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, I mean, as simple as that. It's just like my opinion doesn't matter. I don't have a vote.
Yeah.
Right. The difference is I'm willing to go out and admit I don't have a vote and my opinion doesn't matter. That's the difference.
So it's been a talking point for people in the past few days, and I wanted to kind of just bring it up to be like, why are we having this discussion of like, how dare the committee rank Penn State 4? Do you have a problem with the AP putting Penn State at 4? You didn't say it when they did. Okay. You didn't have a problem when they put Indiana at 5, but clearly when the playoff does, you're Kyle, like, how dare they?
But Kyle, I don't care.
I know.
Okay, you know what I care about? Okay, seeing them beat Purdue this weekend. Okay? In other words, you put yourself in a position based on where you are right now in the snapshot, where if you win, you're fine. That's all you need to do is take care of you. Okay? It doesn't matter about your surroundings. It doesn't matter about the outside noise. I mean, what? They're all sitting there going, oh, Paul Feinbaum doesn't think we should be 4. You think anybody in the football team saying that? They're like going, no. You have to ask. Most of them don't know who he is. Right? Which would be a massive blow to him. Okay? But most of them don't know who he is. Okay? And it's what they need to know is Thieneman 31's a good safety. Okay, Jenkins, the outside defensive end, and Healthy other defensive end, not bad players. Maccabee's a good tailback. I mean, that's, you know, Claire's a good tight end. That's what they need to know. Right? After that, okay, win and keep going. As I said after the Ohio State game, you're in a 4-game playoff to make the playoff. You are now in a 3-game playoff to make the playoff. The goal is when they get on the plane on Saturday night, the goal is to have a 2-game playoff to get to the playoff. In other words, stay at 1 loss. You are in. You control
your own destiny.
What you do. You can only take care of your controllables. That's it. Okay? That's it. Okay? I know that in football, there's a lot of free time to talk. I'm talking about, you know, those of us in the media or write or whatever it happens to be. You have to fill it with something. Okay? So the playoff rankings come out. Heather, by the way, has done a great job, not a good job, a great job over the years of covering the committee. She's put out more important stories about the committee, about the move to 12, about the potential move to 14, about the money, about everything, right? Top shelf, right? And she sees a lot of games. He sees a lot of games, right? But again, it's about the opinions of another group that's in a room in Dallas. I think it's in Dallas, I think is where it is.
Somewhere.
I haven't watched it once, so I don't know. I didn't know it was, to be honest with you, I didn't know it was 4 till the next day.
Yeah. I forgot it was happening, and I was just awake, and then all of a sudden I saw the notification of the rankings were coming, and I was like, right.
It was either at halftime of a game or between games at the State Farm Classic down in Atlanta, whatever.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You know, but there's snapshots. And so that's what this week's snapshot looks like. Hey, there's going to be games this weekend. We'll see what the snapshot looks like next Tuesday. Yeah. But that's all it is. It's all about your ability to go out and win the next game. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Go out, win the next game. I don't care who it's against. Right? Yeah. You're the one that if you end this thing with one loss, I'm talking about for the whole season, one loss, you're in.
Yeah.
Okay? That's where you're controlling what's going on here.
Yeah. The next team I want to bring up in this discussion is the interesting one who similarly controls their own destiny. The team that, if they are to win out, assuming the other team in their conference wins out, we will have a Big 12 title game of BYU and Colorado.
Yeah.
Which
yes,
I need with my whole heart, because what it of course means, Colorado is currently sitting 17th in the rankings. If they win that game, beat BYU, they get in. BYU then has one loss. They presumably get in as well because they've been incredible all season. No. Oh. I think BYU would stay in.
I'm not so sure. It's going to all depend on the SEC and the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Right? As to how many seats there are at the table remaining. Because remember who the wild card is. Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, how many do you have in? That's not... that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, Colorado gets in. Let me throw out another scenario. Say Colorado were to beat BYU.
So Colorado goes what, 10-2 or 11-2, right. Gets in the automatic. BYU is one loss.
Right. So they'd be, as an automatic, they'd actually get a first round bye.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe. Try this on for size.
Okay.
What if Boise State stays in front of Colorado? Boise State would get the first round bye, and Colorado would have to play an opening round game.
Oh.
And the game may not be in Boulder.
No. Oh, wow. I didn't think about that.
That's why I'm here.
That's interesting.
So this is what...
So how would that work for those out there?
Okay, just so everybody knows, it is not the Power 4 get automatic bids. That's not. It is the top. It is the 5 highest ranked champions.
Yes.
And the 4 highest ranked out of the 5 get the bye.
So,
well, if Boise State, if Boise State were to run the table, win the Mountain West, they would be a conference champion. They would represent the group of 5. Right now, they're ranked ahead of Colorado. One would presume they'd still have an excellent chance of staying in front of them. And guess what? They would get the bye.
Yeah.
Probably get to the Fiesta Bowl or something like that. All right, because they're going to try and regionalize this, I'm sure. Like, say Oregon were to win, they go to the Rose Bowl. You know? Okay, and Colorado would have to play a first-round game, and the question would be, by winning, would they have enough to get into the top 8? And now you have to ask the question, well, if they're 9th, that means they're on the road.
Yeah.
They'd be on the road at 8.
This, by the way, has... The point you are making is very interesting for not just the BYU point, but also for the Miami point and the SMU discussion. Because that is
SMU is another interesting discussion.
Miami's 9-1.
Yeah.
They're sitting at 9th right now in the rankings. SMU is 8-1. They're sitting 14th, and Boise State is sitting 13th at 8-1.
Right.
So assuming Boise State wins out, one of these ACC teams is going to lose. If it's Miami, how high does SMU jump, and what happens?
We're gonna have to wait a month, aren't we?
Oh boy, this is what I enjoy. Is now we're having this discussion about probably, let's say there's 20 teams that have a chance to make this playoff.
Yes.
Instead of in previous years we had the 4. Maybe there was 2 teams that we were always like on the border. Last year, a year ago, was of course Florida State and that whole discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're sitting here where there's a world in where SMU gets in. I think there's a world in Army gets in. Because Army, if they beat Notre Dame, what happens? Like, would you leave Army out sitting undefeated? If they run the gambit, they beat Notre Dame, they beat Navy. Like, if they climb their way up, that Notre Dame game, like,
here's one of the issues: the Army-Navy games after the rankings come out.
But they've already stated they are not counting that game for these rankings.
Right. That's what I mean. That's an issue. That means they have one fewer game. They'd have to win the American.
Well, let's say they win the American. They win the title game over Navy. Let's say that happens.
All right,
and let's say they beat Notre Dame.
Let's start with this. I don't think they're beating Notre Dame.
It's fair.
Okay.
But game it out with me, Steve. I love a hypothetical.
I mean, they're a difficult team to get ready for because they play a different style than anybody else. But it should be pointed out that even though I know Navy throws the ball a little bit more now, Notre Dame's already played Navy. Right? So there's certain elements of style that they've seen that it'll help them get ready for this one.
Yeah.
This game's in Yankee Stadium, right? Yeah.
But Army beats Notre Dame. Let's say that happens. Well,
first of all, it knocks Notre Dame out.
Notre Dame's gone.
They're out of it.
Yes.
Okay.
2 losses, they're
done. That knocks them out of it completely. And now, here's what the fight's going to be. The fight will be if, say, things play out, and we all know the way the season's gone, nothing's played out according to the way you thought it was going to be.
Not at all.
But say in the SEC, Big Ten, things play out. Okay.
Yeah.
The fight is going to be, especially in the SEC, like, hey, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
How are you going to keep a 2-loss pick a team? Because they have right now they have 5 teams right now with 2 losses and
Bama,
2 with 1.
Ole Miss, Georgia, Chance Tennessee has 2 losses. A&M's got 2 losses. Yep. Carolina and LSU
still has to play Texas. So.
Yeah. And then Missouri's got 2. LSU and South Carolina each have 3. Like, they're all sitting there in this jumbled up mess. But it would be a discussion of who gets, like, I think Army would have a shot to get around the 15 to 11 range. If they beat Notre Dame and they win out, they would make that a really interesting discussion point.
Well, it would be because they're undefeated.
Yeah. They're undefeated. They will have beaten Notre Dame, who they had ranked pretty highly. Like, they're a good football team.
A win over Notre Dame would be huge for them. There's always 2 things you can always assure yourself of. That in football, if you beat Notre Dame, you'll jump up higher than you should. And a win over Duke puts you in the top 25 in basketball.
That's correct.
Well, Wake Forest is 4-7 in the season, but the win over Duke put them to 23.
Yeah.
What?
So that would, I find this fascinating now that we get to have this discussion of, like, what happens if Army somehow runs the gambit? They beat Notre Dame, they win the American, they win the title game, and then that game with the Navy happens after the fact.
The strength of schedule thing does come into play here.
It'll come into play. I mean, it'll be the discussion point is strength of schedule, and also how much you rank an undefeated team with a big win against Notre Dame over a team that has 2 losses in the SEC. Like, that's going to be a talking point, and that's going to be something that the committee will have to decide. Like, if it was a 1-loss SEC school, let's say Tennessee was the team sitting at 12 and they had 1 loss. That's a different discussion. They have 1 loss. They're an SEC team. The 1 loss versus 0, I think.
Look, Tennessee with 2 losses is in over Army.
Yeah, I know. But, like,
because, again, look, when you're playing in a power conference, right? And let's go back to the expansion discussion they had the other day.
Yeah.
When Steve Sarkisian, right, and Brett Venables, their jobs got exponentially harder. Even though, ironically, schedule-wise, Texas has had the softer schedule.
They've had, I think, the 55th strength of schedule.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Like the big win they have is Michigan.
But Michigan's 5-5,
right.
5-6.
I'm saying that's
like that,
a big win. In other words, their biggest win is the same as Indiana's biggest one. Right? But their jobs got harder because of the the gauntlet they have to run. Just like in the SEC, Kirby Smart's job got harder, right? I mean, Josh Heupel's job got harder, right? Kalen DeBoer's job got harder because Texas and Oklahoma are now in there. They know whereas the conference got deeper. And when the conference got deeper, the thing you didn't expect was Vanderbilt to get better, for example. Yeah. Where a game you're like, hey, we're good. No. There's a reason when you look at the SEC, you have 7 schools that have 2 losses or fewer. 5 of them have 2. 2 of them have 1. Tennessee happens to be one of them. The other one's Texas. Tennessee has to play at Georgia this week. Jeez. Okay. Texas still has to play at Texas A&M. Okay. Yeah. And they're one of the 2-loss teams. That's the issue you have. Same thing in the Big Ten. In the Big Ten, Lincoln Riley, Dan Lanning, okay, Jed Fish, right, and Deshaun Foster, their jobs all got harder because they entered the Big Ten. But conversely, Ryan Day, James Franklin, right, Moore, okay, Loxley, everybody along the line, PJ Fleck, okay, Matt Rule, all their jobs got harder. Yeah. Because those 4 came in. It's going to be the same story in basketball. When you add that kind of quality into the conference, a quality brand, now it becomes more of a gauntlet. That's why if they go to 14, expect the Big Ten and the SEC to say, hey, how about the 4 automatic bids? Right? Like we get 4 each because guess what? It's a knockdown, drag-out fight every week in our conference. Army, okay, on the football field,
yes,
doesn't have a knockdown, drag-out fight every week. This week we're going to play at Texas. Now this week we're going to play Tennessee. Now this week we're going to play Vanderbilt. Wow, Vanderbilt looks like Vanderbilt's having a good year. Oh, great. Okay, like they don't have that. That's the difference. It's not their fault. You are who you are. You're in the conference you're in, but it is a different deal. Where you've got to be on every single week to survive it. And that's what the SEC and the Big Ten, it's the quality of depth of team. Yeah. Right? Army plays USC. USC is under 500 right now. They're 4-5, correct? Who's favored? It's not Army. No, it's going to be USC by double digits. It tells you everything. I'm not a bet. Yeah. I've never laid a single dime in my life on a bet. Never. It's just not me. Okay? But I can tell you right now, they'd be a double-digit underdog. Yeah. Okay?
Let's game out the rest of the SEC.
They play Washington. Yeah. Washington's now 5-5 after the Penn State loss. They're a double-digit favorite.
Let's talk through the rest of the SEC season.
What is Notre Dame Army this week, by the way?
Notre Dame Army.
A neutral field. I'm going to guess Notre Dame's 15.
It is next week. It is Yankee Stadium. As things stand, Notre Dame is favored 88.4% to 11.6. The odds are not out for that game just yet because they wait till the week of. Okay. But it's currently Notre Dame is overwhelming favorites.
Right. What does it tell you?
Yeah, I know.
Right. I mean, it doesn't mean they get everything right out there because obviously they don't. Yeah. Upsets happen. Right? That's why you play games. But, man, they sure are close most of the time. Yeah. Almost freaky.
Freaky close. Let's go through the SEC schedule because this is something that is really intriguing to me now that we've talked about this and we're sitting here. We have 15 minutes left on the show. And I just kind of want to game out the next few weeks, how it looks for the SEC.
Let's just start this week. Texas plays Arkansas.
That's an interesting game.
Not an easy game.
You're in
because
Fayetteville.
Arkansas is so tough in the trenches. Yeah. Right? And I know Texas is a double-digit favorite in that game. But Alabama's got Mercer, so that's the cakewalk game. Right?
LSU has Florida.
Yeah, but LSU's out of it. Doesn't matter.
Done.
They're out of it. I think Missouri loses at South Carolina.
And then they're done. All of a sudden, they have 3 losses. Because South Carolina have 3 losses.
But Missouri's 23.
Yeah.
In this thing, they're already out of it to begin with. I mean, they're really the 2-loss team that really has.
They're playing spoiler.
No traction. Then Georgia, Tennessee, we talked about, and then Texas A&M. Everything for them comes down to playing Texas, and that's in College Station, by the way. Yeah. And they've got New Mexico State this week in a game where they are the prohibitive favorite.
Yeah. Next week's matchups, let's go there next.
Next week.
You have Ole Miss, Florida. That's the first one will start off at noon.
Florida is Lagway might be back.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give Florida credit. They play hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They do play hard.
Yeah.
But they don't have enough to win a game like this.
No.
Okay, Georgia's got UMass, so that's the SEC schedules the cakewalks late.
Alabama has Oklahoma. That game is going to be going on.
But again, Oklahoma is not. This has been a struggle for Oklahoma. They're 5-5. They need to win a game somewhere to get to a bowl.
Yeah.
I don't know where they can do it.
Mm-hmm. And then the week afterwards, the 30th. The final week of the season or the regular season, now, this is where the intrigue happens, where you have Texas A&M.
Okay, well, let's start with this. Georgia plays Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Do not in any way, shape, or form discount that game. Georgia Tech plays tough bully football. Okay? Yeah. And guess what? Guess what Georgia doesn't do well? Shockingly. Georgia does not run the ball well. They are 15th in the SEC out of 16 schools in rushing yards.
Yeah.
They're 15th, and Beck's had an up and down year because of it.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, I know they're 6-4.
But they're a good school.
But
Haynes is a good running back.
Well, Haynes King, quarterback.
Or no, Jamal Haynes, the running back.
Jamal Haynes, sure.
Yeah.
But Haynes King runs that show. And they up front try to bully you. That should be a much better game than people realize. And that's a Friday game.
And then the Saturday games.
Ole Miss plays Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. They should be a white.
Texas A&M is then the starter on Saturday.
That's got to be the primetime game.
And then, by the way, the other intriguing game, Tennessee. Let's say they beat Georgia. They get Vanderbilt that last game.
Right.
We've seen what Vanderbilt can do against a good school.
But here's one for you. What if Tennessee loses the game to Georgia and they play Vanderbilt?
That is
that's a play-in game, maybe.
But let's even say
South Carolina plays Clemson. Okay, non-con game. Game is in quote Death Valley. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to get from Clemson.
Nope.
South Carolina has played well in a lot of games this year. Florida State's playing Florida. Great.
By the way, Florida might have their worst season since, I believe, Jason and I looked, it was 1972 was the last time they had one loss in a season. So it's been a hot minute, but they could be there. Florida State.
Florida State. One win.
Huh?
You said one
win.
Loss.
Oh, my bad. My bad. One win. They had no losses and then one win in a season.
This is what happens. You go back to ACC Media Day. They really gave very little respect. I'm talking about Florida State to Georgia Tech. Okay. And then they lost the game. Florida State is a perfect example of when you get the quarterback wrong. You go into the transfer portal. And, for example, Oregon had a pretty good idea what they were getting with Dylan Gabriel. You know, you're talking about a track record. This is why I'm looking at, like, next week, Max Brosmer.
Yeah.
I give the Minnesota people credit for evaluating him because how do you evaluate a guy at New Hampshire based on the competition he's facing?
Yeah.
Right? Just like you give the Bills a lot of credit for the way they evaluated Josh Allen playing in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the one Josh Allen game I was at when he was in college was Wyoming, Eastern Michigan. I happened to be there speaking that night. Well, it's Eastern Michigan.
Yeah.
Well, Eastern Michigan comes in to play Penn State. They're like a 30-something point favorite. You're like, okay. Right? So to get a read and to make that pick, brilliant on their part. Well, same thing with Brosmer, New Hampshire to Minnesota, and Brosmer's played really well. Okay? Well, with Gabriel, you know what you're getting. He has a track record in high-level FBS, especially as Oklahoma. Okay? Will Howard, Kansas State, championship game in the Big 12, the whole thing. Okay? So you pretty much knew pros and cons against high-level competition where you're getting in Will Howard. DJ Uyunglele, no offense, but you knew what you were getting in him. He had a track record at Clemson and Oregon State, and neither one was inspiring.
Yeah.
And I don't get what they were trying to do there. Now, I know they tried to get Cam Ward. I got that. So did Ohio State, right? And Ward ended up going to Miami. But You knew what you were getting.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon knew they were getting in Gabriel. He had a track record, high track record.
Yeah.
Will Howard, Ohio State knew what they were getting in him. Really good track record.
Yeah.
Really good track record, right? DJ's track record has been flatline. He may have been a 5-star coming out. He has never even remotely come close to playing as a 5-star, right, on this level. I'm not knocking him as a person, a kid, anything like that. I'm just talking about his pure football playing. He hasn't played well, whether it was Clemson or Oregon State, and they thought he was solving them. You watch the opening game, you're like going, oh, my goodness, they have a quarterback issue.
Yeah.
And they never solved it.
Nope.
They never solved it. And they've had people, that, and again, another issue that you have is what's the name across the front? It says Florida State. Well, people are automatically putting a bullseye on you anyway because you're a big name, right? Number 2, you're playing in the ACC. You're the troublemaker.
Yeah.
You're the troublemaker. Every fan base out there hates you because you're trying to break the conference up.
Yeah.
We're way better than you are. Over here in the back, another loss for you. You aren't.
You're sitting at 1-9. Not much you can say.
No. And do you notice all that talk about leaving has died down this season?
Yeah.
All that talk about leaving last year was when they're winning. They're on a roll. They're winning. They're on a roll. But remember, with their quarterback last year, Travis, first 2 years he was at Florida State, they wanted to run him out of Tallahassee.
Yeah. Right?
Now suddenly I know her. Jordan Travis, he's the grand marshal of the parade. Because guess what? He is a good player.
Yeah.
Right? And then he got hurt, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And they've gone 1-10 since. Because they did lose their bowl game. Rather convincingly, I might add.
And the only leaving that has seemingly happened so far has been recruits from Florida State, as there have now been 6 recruits in the last week who have decommitted from Florida State as the season has gone on, which says a lot of different messages, but that has happened. Norvell has fired both coordinators, wide receiver coach. It has just been a landslide of things. The other big story in terms of college football right now is with the game coming up, Tennessee, Georgia, Nico Iyama-Yava. My bad. His name breaks my mind sometimes.
Tennessee.
Iyama-Leava. Yes. Nico Iyama-Leava.
He might not play this week.
He may not play because he is currently in concussion protocol, I believe. He dressed and practiced Monday, Tuesday, but that is the extent of it right now. And we don't know exactly where he's going to be for this game, which, by the way, he hasn't played really well this season. He started off hot and then flat.
Yep.
They have had issues on the offensive side of the ball.
That's why I always refer to it as Overreaction Monday after the first week of the season. Look at this. I'm like, okay, that's a good start.
Let's see it
every time I do a quarterback club, I don't care whether it was with Joe or Bill or with James, I always start out the second one of the season by saying, in the context of an opening game. In other words, that's your starting point. What did you see here, 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 and here in the context of an opening game? In other words, I'm not going to sit there and get in front of the quarterback club like, wow, look what you did in West Virginia. Wow. No. Right? It's a marathon. It's a marathon. And that'll be something, for example, Tom Allen is the guest on the talk show tonight along with Andy Koltanicki and Katie Schumacher-Colley. Talk about volleyball first. But that's going to be the first question I'm going to ask Tom. For 8.5 months, you planned to play a certain way. And after the first quarter of your second game, you lost KJ Winston for the year and had to change everything.
Yeah.
Right? And they've also lost 3 guys that were going to play a lot at all 3 levels. Zariah Fisher, Keon Wiley, KJ Winston. They've had to make a lot of adjustments. So they're not the same team that came out of training camp. Nobody is. Nobody is.
I don't think there is a single team that looks the exact same as they did now versus week one.
Let's go back to Tennessee. Wow, look at this pass, that pass. I'll say this, though. Sampson, the running back, major league player at Tennessee. Could be the offensive player of the year in the conference. Major league running back. Does a lot for them.
Yeah. He's got 201 carries, 20 touchdowns, a little over 1,000 yards, 1,129 to be exact.
Yep.
So he's looking good.
He's played well. He might be the offensive player of the year in the conference.
Yeah.
I mean, which quarterback has stood out in that league?
They've all been up and down.
I mean, Milroe's going to get a lot of, but
he's
when they've lost,
down. Yeah.
When they've lost, he's not had a great game. I mean, that's one thing we're seeing, quarterback play. Ewers is good, but not great.
No.
Right? I don't think he throws the ball hard enough. And then when you pressure him, I mean, Georgia just came at him and swarmed him. All right. I mean, Milroe throws everything 100 miles an hour. Check down, 100 miles an hour. Down the field, 100 miles an hour. It's like it's the same. And is a great runner.
Yeah.
Right? Dart is a fabulous thrower. There's no getting around it. Dart is a great thrower.
But he hasn't had a great year.
He's been good. He's been really good. Because when Trey Harris has been out, he hasn't been as good. All right. And then Diego Pavia has been a terrific X factor. But is he the best quarterback in the? And Carson Beck has been really up and down. No running game is really affected him. He's thrown a lot of interceptions this year. I want to say he's thrown 11.
Give me 1 second and I can confirm this number. Carson Beck is sitting at, if this wants to load, he's sitting at 12 interceptions.
I gave him. I'm positive.
You were being nice to him.
No, I'm a positive guy. But okay, same thing in the Big Ten. The top quarterbacks are Dylan Gabriel, okay, Will Howard, right, Curtis Rourke, and Drew Aller. Okay, those are the top quarterbacks in this conference. Drew Aller is having a fabulous year, and a lot of people don't want to admit it. I don't get it.
Yeah,
Brian Tripp's I see this in practice every day. You watch him throw the ball. Wow. I'm talking like darts.
Yeah.
Accurate. I mean, are they all going to be perfect? No, but geez, he's hitting. I had said at the beginning of the season, I wanted to see him go from 59% plus where he was last year to 65. He's at 70 right now. He's right between 70 and 71.
Yeah.
Really?
70.3 is the current number, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, and I said if he could be 64, 65, he would be having a really, really good year. Well, he's at 70.3. It's a huge league. Hey, and this is what you're telling me. What's Michigan's biggest problem?
They have no quarterback.
They have no quarterback.
I could play quarterback for them.
No, but I was talking to Brad Nessler 2 weeks ago, and Brad says, I think he was doing did Michigan play Oregon? Michigan played Indiana.
Michigan played
Indiana. And he said to me, he says, Steve, he says, I've never done a team 3 times in the season where they had 3 different starting quarterbacks. Never. I mean, really?
Yeah.
I mean, and one of them now has left, Jack Tuttle, who played for time in Indiana.
Yeah.
With concussion protocol. But quarterback play has been interesting in both the NFL and in college. And you know what we've seen more of this year? In both the NFL and college? More interceptions.
Yeah. We're seeing it from even the best guys in the NFL. Mahomes throwing picks. Goff is throwing 5 in a game. We're seeing a lot of people. It's an interesting season. The only players I've been convinced by so far, I think, in college football that have looked in terms of the top tier of player and the Heisman-y conversation, there's only been 2-3 guys. Sure. And Dylan Gabriel's been probably the best quarterback in the nation. He's been great.
Really well. And
they're undefeated. So, of course, he's going to be in this conversation. Then Travis Hunter has played both sides of the ball incredibly well.
So is Shedeur.
And then Shedor's played well. And then Ashton Genty. I mean, when you're putting up the numbers he is,
when I was your age, I couldn't wait for the Heisman announcement. Who won the Heisman? Who won the Heisman? Nah. Unless there's a Penn State guy there, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled for the person that won because it's such a great honor, right? I'm thrilled for them. They won. Hey, it's great. You know, it's something they can be the rest of their life. They're a Heisman Trophy winner. But I don't care about watching the announcement. I don't care about the announcement, anything like that. A finalist, I'm like, okay, that's nice.
Yeah. Know what I care about, Steve? I know as things stand,
By the way, Tim Newton's going to be one of our guests tomorrow.
Nice.
Okay, and blow smoke on the Ravens.
Very nice. Well, there's something I care about, Steve. I know, to wrap this up, we'll have some fun. I know as things stand, Alabama's meant to go to Bloomington, to Indiana for the playoff game, which would be really funny to see have happen in December. But let's be honest here. There's only one thing we all want. I want to see someone go to play on the Smurf turf in December. That is all I want to see have happen. I know it's improbable right now. My God, would it make me overjoyed to see Georgia or Alabama or someone have to go play on the Smurf turf just before Christmas.
I remember Miami a couple of years ago actually played in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl up there. They actually went up there.
Tell me that wouldn't be fun, though. Come on. That would be incredible.
No offense. I find games on that turf hard to watch.
I find them.
No. I mean, I'm talking about visually.
No, I know.
I mean, visually.
It's a lot.
Visually, you're like,
I find that it brings me a lot of joy.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer,